Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. For over a year now, I have been making regular videos documenting the course of my reading. I was never a strong reader, and I have been trying to build that practice. And every so often, a regular feature of this channel has been a video under the title of Recent Reads. So all of the reading during this span of a year plus a little bit has been at least given a bit of lip service on a video under the title Recent Reads. And I didn't realize, I generally try to put 3 books that I have read together and then just talk a little bit briefly about them. I have other videos in which I talk about a book in greater detail, perhaps. And I wasn't really thinking that I was going to need to do one. This year has not really worked out so well. At least this month has not. April has kind of fallen apart for me. I started the year pretty well with War and Peace. That was my January reading. February, I kind of dicked around a bit with different things. And then in March, I read Journey to the West. And then in April, I was going to read Les Miserables. That's this chunker. And I was not enjoying it. This is not the edition I was using. I actually did not care for this very much, this translation. But I was finding myself loath to open the pages of the book every day. Well, it was in ebook form, actually. But nevertheless, I was loath to put in my daily hour of reading. And eventually, all of my reading ceased. I mean, I had other things going on too. So it's not that attempting this book made me completely fall apart. I was busy also. But I have decided, at least for the time being, to lay this aside. I read with a group of people, and everybody else finished it. Or is nearly finished, and for some reason, and everybody loves this book, but I did not love it and have not loved it so far. Perhaps in the future I will pick it up again. I did not expect that I would be doing a Recent Reads video, but I was just looking into my little book. The last Recent Reads video that I did covered 3 titles. I can't remember the 3 exactly. It may well have been... let's see what my book says. It may well have been, now I remember. It was O.R. Gurney on the Hittites. It was The Death Ship by B. Traven. And it was America by Franz Kafka. And as it turns out, I have read, in spite of DNFing Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, DNF being booktube-ese for not finishing. In spite of that, I have 6 books to tell you about, and so this is going to be rather perfunctory. I've made individual videos touching on some of this here and there, and because Les Miserables did effectively put me into a slump, I am trying to get back into the habit of reading by just picking out some fun things to read and some short things. So I will finish with some real short books, but regardless, the total that I have to recount or account for is 6. So after I read in January War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, I read Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, a book of criticism edited or compiled by Harold Bloom. And I didn't finish it at the time I had made that last Recent Reads video, so it is the first title for this one. The book contained a number of essays about War and Peace, and some were better than others. I enjoyed it, but did not love reading criticism. And so after that, I just thought, well, is it me? Am I done with criticism? Criticism was something I did read when I was a writer. I really don't write anymore. I have no further ambitions in that area. And I had picked up No Other Book by Randall, which was a compilation of his literary essays or criticism from his 4 books of essays. And I read that, and that was the second entry in this recent reads video. I finished it. I really enjoyed the book in parts. There were paragraphs that I loved very much. It is not a book that I would just recommend to another person. You probably have to be as embroiled in poetry as I have been in my life, and particularly of that particular era, in order to get the pleasure out of his essays that I did. But nevertheless, I had a good time with the book, and I do recommend it, especially for his writings on Robert Frost, I think. He really loved the poetry of Frost, but he also was a very astute critic of W.H. Auden. So, the next item on today's list is The Journey to the West, which was my big task in March. It is 4 volumes like this. I don't believe that the author of this book has been proved conclusively, but Anthony C.U. was the translator, and I'm sure I've talked about this elsewhere, so that is the 3rd book for this recent reads video. It was a, at times hard and at times frustrating read, but all in all, it was a good read. I was very glad to educate myself on the Monkey King and that whole aspect of Chinese culture, which looms so large in cinema and elsewhere. So when I finished that, I read The Monkey King by Chaiko, C-H-A-I-K-O. It is a comic book version of The Journey to the West, billing itself as complete, but it was not complete. The story goes a certain way and then ends. I didn't expect all of the demon battling adventures to be included, and that was not the problem. But in the original, the monk, or the monks, if you will, eventually do make it to the West, and they accomplish their mission, and then they collect their scriptures and they take them back to China. And the comic book did not cover any of that. I cannot show it to you because it has been given away. It may come back, but it will be young fingers that will be turning those pages, and I don't know what kind of shape it will be in when it comes back. And I don't really care at this point. I believe that a comic book version of a story is not the same thing as the original. Of course, a translation isn't either, but Anthony C.U. did a good job. There are various abridgments, some of which are said to be marvelous in their prose. I can't speak for those. So that was number 4, the comic book story of The Monkey King. So then I had things fall apart for a couple of weeks, and I decided I needed to get back into things. So I read a complete anthology of poetry, and it is this one, Lisbon Poets, and it contains Luis de Camões, Cesario Verde, Mario de Sá Carneiro, Florbella Espanca, and Fernando Pessoa, none of whom I had read. Well, a little bit of Pessoa, I think. Now, the translations in the anthology are not up to snuff of, say, what is in this book. I've talked about this book, the poem itself edited by Stanley Burnshaw, which covers the major European languages. And interestingly, it devotes one section to Spanish and Portuguese. And I've never had any Portuguese. I've studied Spanish and Italian, and I believe I had one or possibly two classes in French. So with any of those, I can fumble my way through, provided I have a good translation at the side. But I've never even attempted to look at the poems in here in Portuguese. And this has piqued my curiosity, and I am thinking that perhaps I should go back to this. This gives prose and literal translations line by line with explanatory material interspersed. So it's very useful. But this was fun. And I normally don't read poetry in translation. I have various books which I have accrued over time. Once in a while, I may pull the book out and read a poem here or there, but poetry in translation is not something that I tend to do, unless it's, say, the poems that are included in a work like that. Normally, I don't log poems that I read, but because I read this anthology from front to back, it goes in here. It was just a day read, and so that was my 5th book for the Recent Reads video. I should just refer to the translators. For the record, it was translated by Martin Earl and Martin Devlin. I felt, as I say, that the translations left something to be desired. It is a bilingual edition. So with my somewhat bleak or oblique familiarity with Romance languages, I can at least compare the lines to the translation and make some kind of determination about what might be missing. So I would like to see all of these poets in better versions, or more complete versions, I would say. This is a selection, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed these very much. I might rather have something a little more scholarly, I suppose is what I'm saying. And then for the last book, or the 6th book for today's Recent Reads video, I read How to Win an Election. This is only about 40 pages of text. I know it looks bigger than that, and it's an essay, or actually a letter, that I long wanted to read and didn't know it existed in this edition until by chance I saw it. This is Princeton University Press, and they have a lot of these smaller editions, generally excerpting something from a bigger work. But this is not the famous Cicero, it's his brother. And so you can actually see, they say there is a bust of the author's brother here. And his brother was advising him on how to canvass for votes, essentially. And it may well be my #1 read so far this year. It's a bilingual edition. You probably don't need the Latin if you're like me, but the translation itself was good. The introductory material explaining the nuances of the word choice was very helpful. And then there's a little bit of aftermatter talking about how the election went. So the total page count of the text of the letter is 41 pages, and not very densely packed pages. So it's an easy read. But the introduction makes comparison to Machiavelli's The Prince. And I think, pound for pound or whatever, there's a lot more in this than in The Prince. I think The Prince is probably much more suited to our time, because this is strictly limiting itself to the practice of, as I say, canvassing for votes, how to get people to vote for you underneath a constitutional system. Machiavelli was more aiming his discourse to the prince who coveted power by any means necessary or possible, any which way he could. So a big part of Machiavelli is saying you should arm your followers. They will not use their weapons against you. But if you lose the election or for whatever reason, you can just massacre your opponents. This book never goes there. This book takes everything above the board at the constitutional level. But as such, it has a lot of insight into how politicians act. There are blurbs on the back from Karl Rove, Gary Hart, and Adrian Meyer. So the last one I don't know, but Gary Hart was a senator, and Karl Rove a nefarious, behind-the-scenes political, what is the word, operative for George H.W. Bush, I believe, and W. Bush. So it was a marvelous read. And that is the 6 things that I have to talk about, and I have talked about them. I am back to this, the book about Iraq, and so with any luck, I will be finishing this soon. I have to put a priority on this because this is my Historathon first quarter reading assignment, and we are already a month into Historathon quarter 2. And also, separate from this, I have been reading Henry Adams' The History of the United States. That has also fallen away for a couple of weeks, and I need to get back to that. I will leave that here. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel, and I will continue to post as I continue to read. I am also behind on a couple of tags, and I have some other ideas for things I want to talk about.